Let's speak to Charles Goadby, who is a farmer. Charles, afternoon to you, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, Ian.
Nice to have you with us. Are you one of the affected farmers? Let me ask you that to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. So we farm, we've quite a large farm, 675 acres that we own. I'm in partnership with my two brothers and my 80-year-old father, who is the majority landowner.
Yeah. So what's the scenario that would play out under these plans from Rachel Reeves?
That would play out, we would be looking at a significant tax bill. I mean, if you look at land prices in this area, they're extremely hard because there's a lot of outside influence. There's a lot of rollover money that's coming from building, and there's a lot of business taking land away from food production and farming as well. So if I based our land on land values at the minute, we'd be looking at something in the region of a £2 million tax bill, and even spread over 10 years, interest-free. Our returns on what we're making from farming and food production is not going to pay that.
In terms of what farmers could, because the outsider, you will understand this more than anybody, Charles, but an outsider goes, hang on, you've got all those acres, that's a lot of land, that's a lot of farm, you must be squillionaires. I'm surprised I'm not speaking to you from a hammock in Barbados right now. You know, that kind of image that follows these kind of stories around. So what is the reality then? What is it not a case of, like other businesses would say, look, we've got to sell a bit, or, you know, we'll have to find a way around it, the payment can be deferred? Would there literally be no way around that bill coming your way if it did?
So there's no denying farmers are asset rich. You know, the land, as I've said, you know, we're worth an awful lot of money on paper.
Yeah.
But you don't realise that asset unless you sell it. And who's actually going to buy it at the minute? As I've said, farming returns, it's not viable. It will not buy farmland. So, I mean, 56% of all farmland last year was bought by non-farmers. So that land is going outside of agriculture. It's going into things like solar projects. It's going into non-farming related activities, such as your likes of your businesses buying land to rewild and plant trees for carbon offsetting.
Right.
And that is going to have severe impacts on our national food security. I mean, as a nation, we've already seen our food security drop by about 25% since 1980. And if we follow current paths, you know, the current trajectory that this government are saying with their environmental schemes, Natural England are saying it's going to fall by another 25%. And all that's coming at a time when, you know, around the world, we've got to increase food production by about between 60 and 80% just to keep up with demand between now and 2050.
What do you say to the wider story here? You'll be familiar, Charles, with farming industries across other countries in Europe that are also having problems with their governments, but for slightly different reasons. That, you know, land is being taken from them, I think, is the central allegation. I couldn't give you the full details of it, but I'm sure you're familiar with these stories that farmers being paid, you know, not to, you know, to get rid of land because they don't want this industry really to get any bigger because they cite environmental considerations. And so, you know, food production in terms of livestock, as distinct from anything else, are areas that they want to reduce over time. So that's why farmers are protesting in other countries. Do you sense this is in any way connected to that wider discussion?
Certainly, a lot of land is being taken out of production for carbon offsetting. I heard a case only a couple of days ago, and I haven't verified this. I don't know how true this is, but 350 acres of land was bought under compulsory purchase up in Cheshire in Sandbach, and that was for Amazon to be able to plant trees on for their carbon offsetting.
Wow.
Now, I can't see how that's possible unless it's, you know, related to the council buying it on their behalf because of the employment they're bringing into the area. But certainly, yeah, there's a lot of things, and even in the government policies, the agricultural policies that are encouraging us to, you know, do things for nature, the sustainable farming incentive, it's taking land out of production to reduce our carbon footprint in this country. And that's all very well and good, but actually what is the point when we are giving up efficient food production, we're some of the most efficient food producers in the world with, you know, the lowest carbon footprints there are. If we're giving that up to then import food that doesn't meet our standards, isn't as efficient, is actually having a negative impact on the worldwide environment and, you know, worldwide carbon footprint. And at the same time, you know, in 2020, we had 1 million people sign a petition saying they wanted to maintain British standards. We're bringing in food that doesn't meet those standards. You know, it doesn't have our animal welfare standards or our environmental standards. And before you know it, we're going to be importing chlorinated chicken and hormone beef.
Because that we'll have no alternative, because we simply won't be able to produce enough domestically.
Yeah. We're just leaving ourselves short in a more and more competitive world market for food.
In terms of what can happen next, we know many farmers have said, look, we've got to escalate this campaign. What kind of form can that realistically take? Even though you've got an awful lot of support, I can't really, I mean, there's one or two dodgy characters out there who don't have sympathy, but I think most people find this astonishing, what is happening to your industry. But how can you keep up the pressure and increase the message, as it were?
Yeah, and we have got to keep up the pressure. And it was phenomenal just at being in London yesterday, the amount of support there was. And I had people stopping me and saying, just stop the food. You know, they'll soon learn. Yeah. But actually, that's a really dangerous area, because we've got the public on board, and we want to produce food, and we're proud of the food we produce, and we want to produce it for the British public that are supporting us. So it's a fine line of keeping everybody on board. But there are lots of conversations that are being had. And, you know, just one example that's been spoken of, that, you know, by a lot of farmers around this area is the sewage muck, you know, the byproducts from the water treatment plants, that actually gets spread on farmers' fields. Yeah. Now, if we refuse to take that for 7 days, that's going to cause, you know, a huge backlog, and actually could, you know, to the point where the sewage companies can't cope with it. Of course. So there are many different things that we can look at and different approaches we can take. Well, whatever it is, I mean, I wish you so much luck, Charles, in advancing this and keeping up the pressure. Let's see if the Treasury are in any way malleable to some of these, you know, what look to me every bit like completely reasonable suggestions. Is there something else going on here? I mean, I mentioned what's happened in, I'm tempted to say, the Netherlands. Am I right in saying that? When it comes to farmers' disputes, certainly Belgium, I think, have had some problems. Compulsory land grabs from governments. I might be slightly misplaced on some of this info, but I don't think I'm far out. We need your land. You've got to produce less. We don't want that amount of dairy cows. We don't want that amount of pigs and whatever. Is this a kind of backdoor way of trying to achieve a similar thing? I mean, I would say not. It's tempting to connect the two. And the reason I would say not is because it's so far down the line for it to have an effect. If this was about, look, if we do this, then they're going to close the farms, and we put them all out of business, and then we will achieve the same result as other countries have by stopping them breeding cattle or whatever. I don't think this would have that effect, because it's over such an elongated period of time, I think.